What happens when a respected politician, a symbol of strength and authority, is humiliated in a moment of travel? What if that moment of injustice was witnessed by hundreds of passengers and resolved in the most unexpected way? This is a story of power, resilience, and a fight against prejudice that will leave you speechless. It is a story of how a single act of defiance can change the course of a journey and even the course of history. Meet Monica Adams, a prominent black politician, a trailblazer in her field, and a respected leader who has spent years fighting for equal rights. She's been a beacon of strength for her community, dedicating her life to standing up for justice, fairness, and equality. As a prominent figure, Monica is no stranger to the public eye. But today, as she boards this routine flight back home from a crucial political summit, she isn't thinking about the cameras or the press. She's just a woman, tired from a long week of meetings and negotiations, looking forward to a quiet flight. The flight begins like any other. The cabin hums with the gentle buzz of conversations, the soft clinking of trays, and the occasional murmur of flight attendants making their rounds. Monica is settled into her seat, her thoughts drifting to the work ahead of her. She's prepared for the political battles awaiting her, the legislative work, the speeches, the endless struggle. But in this moment, she only seeks rest. Her mind drifts back to her goals, her family, and how far she's come. But little does she know, this routine journey will soon take an unexpected turn, a moment of humiliation, one that will challenge everything she stands for. It begins innocuously enough, a simple interaction with a flight attendant who, on the surface, is just doing their job. But what seems like an innocent exchange soon reveals itself to be a moment laced with prejudice and bias. The flight attendant's attitude towards Monica is condescending, dismissive, and laced with subtle, yet unmistakable racial undertones. Monica, who has faced countless obstacles in her life, who has spent years fighting systems of oppression, is no stranger to racism. But this, in the confined space of an airplane in front of hundreds of people, this is different. The situation escalates quickly, with Monica's dignity and resolve being tested in real time. What should have been a simple interaction, a request for something as mundane as a glass of water, suddenly turns into a confrontation. Monica, known for her poise and unyielding strength, feels the sting of the flight attendant's words, but instead of responding with anger or outrage, she stands firm. She is in a public setting, a captive audience of passengers witnessing every word and every look exchanged. This is no longer just a personal dispute. It is a fight for her own dignity and for the dignity of every person who has ever been marginalized. The stakes are higher than just one woman's pride. They are about standing up for what is right, even when the world watches and judges. But what happens next will leave everyone stunned. Just as the tension reaches its peak, the flight attendant, who was once so sure of her authority, finds herself confronted not just by Monica, but by someone else entirely. The pilot. Yes, the pilot. The very person who is supposed to command the flight, to ensure the safety and well-being of all passengers, steps in and takes control of the situation in a way that no one could have expected. The moment is surreal, a moment when someone with the authority to change the trajectory of the plane's course steps forward to defend Monica. In that instant, what started as a personal conflict becomes a matter of justice, integrity, and a shared fight against prejudice. How will Monica handle the confrontation? Will she fight back against the prejudice in a public setting, or Will she hold her ground in a way that will surprise even her critics? And what happens when the pilot steps in to defend her? This moment, this crossroads between power and injustice, will reveal not only the strength of one woman, but the power of justice when it's least expected. Monica has always been an advocate for standing up against oppression, but now she faces the ultimate test. Will this moment of adversity strengthen her resolve, or will it force her to question everything she's fought for? This is not just a battle for Monica. It's a battle for everyone who's ever felt the sting of prejudice. And when the pilot steps in, it becomes clear that sometimes the fight for justice isn't about doing the loudest thing or having the biggest voice. Sometimes it's about doing what's right, even when it seems impossible. This is just the beginning of an unforgettable story, one where the fight for dignity, respect, and justice is far from over. Stay tuned to see what happens when power, resilience, and the unexpected collide in the most surprising way. Monica Adams is no stranger to the weight of expectations. A trailblazer in her field, she has spent her career fighting for racial justice, earning the respect of both her peers and the communities she serves. Her reputation precedes her. Monica is a leader, a woman whose voice has been a constant presence in the fight for policy change and equal rights. Her resume speaks volumes about her strength, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to making the world a better place. On this particular day, Monica is returning to her home city after a successful campaign to promote groundbreaking policy changes. As the plane ascends into the sky, she is calm, composed, and looking forward to the quiet comfort of reuniting with her family. A moment of peace after a whirlwind of political meetings and press conferences. What she doesn't expect is that her calm journey will soon be shattered by an incident she never could have anticipated. Monica is accustomed to the challenges that come with her position. She's dealt with racism, sexism, and the myriad obstacles that women of color in politics face on a daily basis. But she's always stood strong, maintaining an air of grace and resilience that commands respect. Today, however, she's just another passenger on a plane. No cameras, no audience, just a woman returning home after doing the hard work of fighting for change. She's ready for the peace that comes with being back in the comfort of her family's embrace. But the world has other plans. Enter Karen, a flight attendant who has been with the airline for over a decade. To most, Karen appears to be the epitome of professionalism, efficient, polite, and courteous. She has spent years learning the ins and outs of the airline industry, and her duties are second nature. But beneath her polished exterior lies a troubling reality. Karen harbors prejudices she's never fully confronted. The world around her has allowed her to hide these biases under the guise of politeness. But today, those biases will emerge in a way that nobody, least of all Monica, could foresee. Karen's role on this flight is simple. Ensure that passengers are comfortable and safe. Serve meals and attend to any needs that arise. But as the flight progresses, her attitude begins to shift. The calm, professional air she initially exuded begins to crack when she encounters Monica. Without reason, she treats Monica with an air of condescension, giving her a cold smile and dismissing her questions as if she doesn't deserve the same respect afforded to other passengers. At first, Monica, ever the poised politician, brushes it off. She knows the world is full of people who will judge her, and she has learned to rise above such small moments. However, Karen's behavior only intensifies, turning what should have been a routine exchange into an uncomfortable interaction. The situation escalates when Karen returns to Monica's seat, demanding that she comply with a seemingly trivial request, one that other passengers aren't being asked to follow. It's not just the request itself that strikes Monica as strange, it's the way Karen delivers it. There's a clear undertone of hostility, an unspoken bias that Monica can feel in the air, sharp and palpable. This isn't about protocol. This is about something deeper. Karen's eyes reveal it all. This is a power play. Monica, recognizing the injustice, tries to calmly assert her position, but Karen's attitude only grows more dismissive. She's treating Monica as though she's somehow less deserving of respect, less deserving of being heard. Meanwhile, the passengers on the plane remain mostly unaware of the unfolding tension. Some are buried in their books or screens, others dozing off to the hum of the engines, none the wiser to the simmering conflict that is taking shape within the narrow confines of the airplane cabin. The setting, in its calm normalcy, only serves to make the tension between Monica and Karen feel more intense. The flight, once a routine trip, has now become a stage for an unjust confrontation. As the cabin crew continues to carry out their duties, the passengers remain blissfully unaware of the brewing storm in the cockpit of their journey. They're caught up in their own worlds, too busy to notice the way Monica's dignity is being eroded, piece by piece. Yet, even in this sea of indifference, something is shifting. Monica's calm demeanor is slowly giving way to frustration. She is a woman who has spent her life fighting for equality and respect, but here she is, stuck on a plane, being treated like an afterthought by someone who should be extending her the same courtesy as everyone else. It's clear that Monica isn't going to let this slide. Not this time. She's fought too long and too hard for her own voice to be ignored. As the situation continues to escalate, she begins to realize something important. This moment, as small as it may seem to some, is part of a larger pattern, a pattern of disrespect, of prejudice that has been tolerated for far too long. And though she may be alone in the sky, her voice matters just as much as anyone else's. What started as an ordinary flight, a simple trip home, has now turned into something much larger. It's a fight for dignity, for respect, and for justice. One that Monica, the politician who has always led with strength, is now about to face head-on. What will she do when faced with this unexpected and unjust treatment? Will she let it slide, or will she stand up in a way that will inspire everyone watching? This is just the beginning of a story that will challenge the very foundations of prejudice, authority, and what it means to stand up for what's right, even when no one is looking. It all begins with what should have been a simple request. Monica is asked to adjust her seat. The flight attendant, Karen, approaches her with a polite but firm tone, explaining that the seat needs to be repositioned. Monica, accustomed to dealing with such minor inconveniences during her travels, agrees without hesitation. She knows the protocols, she understands the flight's safety measures, and she's more than willing to comply. After all, it's just a small adjustment, and she's not one to make a fuss over trivial matters. But as Monica starts to shift her seat, Karen's tone suddenly shifts. The request, seemingly so benign, is accompanied by a sharp remark. "It's about time you learned some manners," Karen says, her words laced with a subtle but unmistakable edge. It's a comment that catches Monica off guard, one that feels personal, one that has nothing to do with the safety of the flight or her comfort as a passenger. It's not the words themselves, but the tone and implication that Monica immediately picks up on. There's something about the way Karen speaks to her, something beneath the surface, something that Monica recognizes from years of experience: racial bias. Monica, ever composed and fully aware of her rights, doesn't react with anger. She takes a deep breath, her calm demeanor never faltering. She's dealt with much worse in her career: public slights, media attacks, political opponents who tried to break her down. But this feels different. Karen's words are a direct challenge to her dignity. It's not about the seat anymore. It's about something far more insidious: Karen's attempt to assert her authority, to put Monica in her place, to remind her, subtly but forcefully, that Monica, as a black woman, is somehow less deserving of the same respect as the other passengers on the flight. Monica remains composed, refusing to let the situation spiral out of control. She looks at Karen with quiet resolve and responds with a level-headed tone. The request is unnecessary. I don't need to adjust my seat further. I expect to be treated with the same respect as any other passenger on this flight. There is no shouting, no grand gestures, just the steady assertion of her dignity. But Karen, perhaps sensing that she can continue to push, doesn't back down. Instead, her tone grows sharper, more dismissive. "You don't have a choice in the matter," Karen snaps, her voice louder than it needs to be. There's a clear attempt to assert power, to dominate the situation. And now, her words are dripping with an arrogance that Monica can't ignore. The passengers, who had been oblivious to the growing tension between the two women, begin to notice the exchange. Some glance up from their screens, others shift uncomfortably in their seats. It's clear that something is happening, but no one knows how to respond. Karen steps even closer, attempting to intimidate Monica in front of the other passengers, raising her voice slightly, as if to make an example of her. "If you don't comply, I'll have to involve the captain," she says, her words intended to undermine Monica's confidence. This is no longer about a seat adjustment. This is about Karen's belief that Monica, as a black woman, should know her place: quiet, subservient, and compliant. The passengers exchange uneasy glances. Some appear shocked, others unsure of how to react. But none of them intervene. The discomfort in the cabin grows, the tension palpable. It's as if the entire atmosphere of the plane has shifted from the casual hum of air travel to an uncomfortable standoff. Monica can feel the eyes of the passengers on her, some filled with sympathy, others perhaps with doubt. She knows that many of them are silently hoping she'll just back down, hoping that the discomfort will pass. But Monica stands firm, her back straight and her expression unyielding. She is not going to let this go. "Do you really think I'm going to be intimidated by this?" Monica asks, her voice steady, though a hint of the frustration she feels starts to creep through. "I've spent my entire life fighting for respect, for equality, and for justice. I will not be bullied by anyone, least of all you." She doesn't shout, but her words carry weight. This isn't about a small disagreement on a plane. This is about the centuries of prejudice and racism that still plague society. This moment, for Monica, is a microcosm of the struggles she faces every day in her career, every day in her life. It's a reminder that even the most powerful voices can be silenced by the small, insidious acts of racism that fester in places no one expects. The situation becomes even more uncomfortable as Karen's frustration mounts. She knows she's losing control of the situation. The passengers are beginning to take sides, though they remain largely silent. Some look away, perhaps uncomfortable, with the racial tension now filling the cabin, while others lean forward slightly, observing the confrontation. Monica, however, does not let the uncomfortable silence intimidate her. She looks around, making eye contact with a few of the passengers who have started to pay attention. She's not just standing up for herself. She's standing up for everyone who has ever been silenced, ignored, or treated as less than. Karen, in an effort to regain control, steps back and signals for the other flight attendants. It's clear she's out of her depth now, and her attempt to assert dominance only exposes her deep-seated biases. Monica has not backed down. She has stood her ground, and in doing so, she's shifted the entire dynamic of the flight. The calm and professional atmosphere has been replaced by an unease that lingers in the air. As the flight attendants move toward Monica, it becomes clear that this will not be the end of the confrontation. This moment, though it may seem small to some, is a flashpoint, a reminder that racism is not something that can be ignored or swept under the rug. The tension in the cabin is thick, the atmosphere heavy with the knowledge that something must be done. Monica's defiance has set the stage for what will follow, and what happens next will not only change the course of her journey, but could very well change the course of how the passengers view justice, power, and equality. The tension in the cabin is palpable, the silence almost suffocating. Monica stands her ground, her posture unwavering despite the pressure she feels. The crew members have gathered nearby, silently observing the unfolding situation, unsure of how to proceed. The passengers shift in their seats, some uneasy, others clearly uncomfortable, with the tension brewing in the air. Karen's efforts to assert her authority seem to have reached a breaking point, and the atmosphere is thick with anticipation. But just as it seems like the situation might spiral further, a voice cuts through the oppressive silence, calm yet commanding. "This is your captain speaking." The voice rings out over the intercom, carrying a sense of authority and control that immediately demands attention. "We've received reports of inappropriate behavior from a crew member. It's important to remember that all passengers are entitled to respect, regardless of who they are. Any further disruption will not be tolerated." The message hits like a thunderclap. For a moment, the entire cabin goes completely still, as if time itself has frozen. Karen, who had been holding on to the illusion of power, suddenly pales. The realization of what has just happened dawns on her, and it's clear she's caught off guard. The captain's announcement is direct and unambiguous. There's no room for misinterpretation. It's not just a vague hint. It's an outright public condemnation of her actions, and the power dynamics on the plane shift dramatically in that instant. Monica, standing tall and composed, feels a quiet sense of triumph. It's not a loud, overt victory, but one that resonates deeply within her. The passengers, who had been silent observers up until now, begin to look around, taking in the weight of what has just been said. The room that was once divided between those who felt sympathy for Monica and those who were unsure has now been forced into a clear realization. The focus is no longer on Monica as the supposed troublemaker, but on Karen's actions as the disruptive force. The room has turned its attention, and it is Karen, not Monica, who is now the one under scrutiny. Monica, with a quiet grace, looks around the cabin. She meets the eyes of several passengers, and for the first time since the confrontation began, there is a shift in the atmosphere. The tension that once hovered around her now seems to dissipate, replaced by a quiet understanding. The injustice she had been enduring, the quiet discrimination she faced, is no longer invisible. It has been acknowledged, not just by Monica, but by the captain's words that now hang heavily in the air. In that brief moment, Monica becomes more than just a passenger. She becomes a symbol, the symbol of someone who stood her ground when it mattered, someone who, even in the face of adversity, refused to be pushed down. She is a figure of resistance, quiet, dignified, and unwavering. And now, with the captain's words echoing through the cabin, the power dynamics have shifted. The tide has turned, and it is clear. The passengers are starting to realize the gravity of the situation. The shift in power is palpable. Karen's earlier confidence has evaporated, leaving her standing with no defense, no justification for her actions. The crew members, once passive observers, now seem to be taking a step back, uncertain of how to proceed. The cabin, once tense and filled with apprehension, now seems to exhale a collective breath, as if the words of the captain have somehow relieved the pressure in the room. The injustice Monica was facing is no longer something that can be ignored. It's been acknowledged, and in that acknowledgement, there is a kind of power. Monica doesn't gloat, doesn't allow herself a moment of victory. She remains composed, dignified in her quiet triumph. She knows that the real battle is not about this single moment. It's about the broader fight for respect, for equality, and for justice. But as she stands there, still facing the reality of the tension that has unfolded around her, she knows that something significant has just happened. The balance has shifted. What was once an isolated incident, a quiet act of racial prejudice, is now in the open, being scrutinized by all. As the flight continues, the passengers seem to reflect on what has just transpired. Some shift uncomfortably in their seats, still processing the events. Others glance at Monica with newfound respect. They now see her not just as a politician, but as a woman of strength and character, someone who faced injustice and refused to be cowed. Monica has shown them what it means to stand up, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. The captain's words, though brief, have changed the course of this flight. The cabin, once filled with a sense of impending discomfort, now feels more aware. The passengers are no longer passive observers. They have been forced to confront the injustice that has unfolded before them, and in doing so, they have become part of the larger story. Monica's quiet defiance, the captain's swift action, and Karen's subsequent realization create a powerful moment, a moment that leaves everyone on the flight changed, whether they realize it or not. Monica, with quiet dignity, glances around the cabin once more, knowing that this moment, while small in the grand scheme of things, has the potential to spark something larger. The battle against prejudice, the fight for respect, it's an ongoing struggle. But in this moment, in this flight, the forces of justice and power have found their voice, and it all began with Monica's decision to stand tall, to hold her ground, and to demand the respect she is owed. As the flight continues, the tension in the cabin begins to dissolve, but the weight of the confrontation still lingers in the air. The passengers are visibly more alert now, some glancing at each other, others still processing the events that just unfolded. The moment of truth has passed, but the ripples of what happened are far from over. Karen, the flight attendant whose actions sparked the incident, stands quietly at the back of the plane. She had expected a routine shift, but now she's facing the consequences of her behavior. Her posture is defeated, her shoulders slumped as she's escorted off the plane by another crew member. Her head is hung low in shame, her previous confidence shattered by the captain's public condemnation and the realization of her own prejudices laid bare. Karen had thought she held the power in this situation, that her authority as a crew member would silence Monica. But now, In front of everyone, her actions have been exposed. There's no hiding behind the guise of professionalism anymore. The passengers, who had once been passive observers, now know what she did, and there's no escaping the discomfort of being called out for her discriminatory behavior. The silence in the cabin is broken only by the soft hum of the engines, but it's not the same silence that lingered before. This one is different. It's charged with something more. The injustice that was allowed to fester is no longer unseen. The power dynamics that had been shifted in Monica's favor are now clear to everyone. As Karen exits, the crew members, now taking charge, ensure that Monica's flight experience continues without further incident. The other attendants, who had stayed out of the way before, now step in with an air of professionalism, guiding the flight back to a peaceful course. Monica, who had been the target of the hostility, is now treated with the utmost respect. As the minutes tick by, the atmosphere begins to settle, but the events haven't gone unnoticed. The passengers, who had been largely quiet until now, begin to speak up. It starts with a few tentative voices, people who lean over and offer Monica apologies for not speaking up sooner. Some express their admiration for her composure and bravery in standing up to the injustice. One by one, passengers start to offer words of encouragement, telling Monica that they are sorry they didn't realize what was happening until it was almost too late. There's an air of regret, mixed with the relief that the right thing was done in the end. Monica, who had been shaken by the ordeal, takes a deep breath and turns to face the passengers who are speaking to her. Her heart, still racing from the intensity of the confrontation, slows as she realizes that the flight has shifted in a way that no one could have predicted. She smiles faintly, grateful but humble. She knows that she doesn't need the apologies, but in this moment, the support of the people around her means more than she could express. She quietly thanks the passengers, nodding at them in acknowledgement. She doesn't need grand gestures, and she doesn't seek public recognition. Her fight has never been for applause. It's always been for respect, for dignity, for justice. And in this small but powerful way, that's exactly what she's received. The flight continues its course, the tension in the cabin slowly melting away. The passengers, once silent and passive, are now more engaged, more aware of the dynamics around them. They've witnessed something that's changed them all in some way, whether they realized it or not. The silence that had once been their shield from uncomfortable truths has been broken. No longer can they ignore the ways in which prejudice can manifest, even in the most mundane of spaces. The moment of justice has passed, and with it, a sense of collective responsibility seems to linger. They have seen what happens when silence is broken, and when one person has the courage to stand up for what's right. For Monica, the flight isn't just a return home. It's a powerful reminder of her purpose. She has faced injustice, stood tall in the face of discrimination, and in doing so has helped to create a small shift in the world around her. She hasn't just gained the respect of the passengers on the flight. She has reminded them all of their own responsibility to speak out, to recognize wrong when they see it, and to never let prejudice go unchecked. As the plane continues its journey, the world outside the windows is still. But inside the cabin, something has changed. The flight is no longer just a simple trip. It has become a moment of awakening, a microcosm of the larger battle against injustice that Monica Adams has fought for years. The battle is far from over, but today, in this small way, she has won. And in the hearts of those who witnessed the moment, that victory will echo far beyond the walls of the airplane. In a world where prejudice often lurks in the shadows, there are moments when a single act of courage can shine a light, breaking through the darkness. Monica Adams's story is a powerful reminder that standing up for what's right, even in the most challenging circumstances, can change the course of everything. The courage she displayed on that flight wasn't just about defending herself. It was about confronting a system of bias that many people choose to ignore. Monica didn't back down when faced with injustice. She didn't allow herself to be silenced or diminished. In doing so, she showed all of us what true strength looks like. What Monica's story teaches us is that while the world can often feel indifferent or even hostile, we all have the power to make a difference. Every situation, no matter how small it may seem, is an opportunity to stand up, speak out, and make a change. It's easy to look the other way when faced with injustice, but Monica's actions proved that sometimes it only takes one person to shift the balance. She refused to be complicit in the face of racism, and in doing so she made an impact that rippled through not just the flight, but the hearts of everyone who witnessed her strength. Her courage has left us with a lasting reminder that standing up for what is right is always worth it, no matter the cost or the environment in which it happens. The way Monica handled the confrontation, with grace and quiet power, is a testament to the resilience that is needed when fighting for dignity and respect. In an environment where people often remain passive to avoid conflict, Monica chose to act. She used her voice, her presence, and her unwavering sense of justice to call out the wrong in a way that not only held the flight attendant accountable, but also shifted the perspective of everyone around her. She made those on the flight confront their own biases and recognize the importance of speaking out against injustice, no matter where it occurs. The story reminds us that injustice can take many forms, and often it hides in plain sight. It isn't always about grand acts of defiance. It's about the quiet moments when people decide to stand firm, to push back against behavior that diminishes others. Monica's decision to not accept mistreatment, her ability to remain composed under pressure, and the way she handled the situation with dignity is something that we can all take inspiration from. Her story is a call to action for all of us to not accept the status quo of injustice, but to challenge it in whatever form it appears, no matter the setting. As we reflect on Monica's experience, it's also important to think about how we can apply these lessons in our own lives. Have you ever been in a situation where you stood up to racism or injustice, even when it wasn't easy? How did it change you or those around you? Perhaps you've been in a similar situation where, like Monica, you had to confront uncomfortable truths and make a stand. Or maybe you've witnessed something and regretted not speaking out. These moments, both big and small, define who we are and what kind of world we want to live in. By sharing your own stories and reflections, we can all contribute to building a culture of courage, empathy, and action. The more we talk about these moments, whether they involve us directly or not, the more we create spaces where standing up for what's right becomes the norm, not the exception. Your voice matters, and your actions can inspire change in ways you may never fully realize. If Monica's story has touched your heart, if it has sparked something in you, I encourage you to like and share this video. Let's continue to spread the message that standing up for what's right, no matter where or when, can truly change the world. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that their voice can make a difference too. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. We need more stories of courage, more stories of justice, and more stories that remind us all of our collective responsibility to speak out against what's wrong. Together, we can build a world where silence isn't a shield, where injustice isn't allowed to fester, and where every person, no matter their background or position, can feel safe, heard, and respected.